1.3c is quadratic functions. I have already written on the paper for us a couple formulas. Vertex form, f of x equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. When it's in this form, it's in vertex form, and we can pull out the vertex. Notice I have the vertex written here, hk, so your x coordinate is right here. And notice you change the sign. So whenever you pull your x value out, you're going to change the sign. If it's a minus h here, it'll be a positive h when you pull it out. If it had been a plus h, it would have been a negative h here. All right, so this is where your y coordinate is. It's the constant at the end, and notice the sign stays the same. So if this had been a negative k, then it would have been a negative k in the vertex. So we'll give a few problems a try. In the example I have for us today, it says find the vertex form of the quadratic function. Then we're going to find the intercepts, the vertex, the maximum or minimum, and the range. So we've got f of x equals x squared minus 8x plus 12. Let's find the vertex form first. And what we're going to do is we're going to complete the square. So the formula for completing the square is you take your middle term, okay, remember the a is in front of the x squared term, the b is in front of the x, and the c is the constant. So we're going to take our b, divide it by 2, and square it. Okay, so you're going to do that to both sides. So I'm going to just write that formula over here. You take your b, you divide it by 2, and you square it. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So you're going to do this to both sides. So we've got f of x plus, well, my b is negative 8. Since you end up squaring it, it doesn't matter if you put the negative. So I usually, to make it look a little nicer, leave the negative off. So I've got 8 over 2 squared equals x squared minus 8x. And then I add it right here because this whole thing is going to be a perfect square once we do this. So it's going to look nicer if we put it right here. And then plus 12. Let's simplify it a little bit. So I've got f of x plus 8 divided by 2 is 4, and then 4 squared is 16 equals x squared minus 8x. And of course this is 16 again as well. It was the same thing, but I'm going to leave it 4 squared, and you'll see why in a second. Because if you just follow this formula, you'll be able to pull down the pieces. Okay, so we've got f of x plus 16 equals, we did this because now this is a perfect square. You can factor it and you pull down the pieces. You take down the x, you take down that first sign, and you take out the number that was squared. So this actually factored into x minus 4 squared. Well, you can think about it how you did in college algebra if you want to, if you don't believe it. Okay, we've got our middle term is negative 8 and our last term is 16. Okay, so remember the sum is in the middle, so two numbers that add up to negative 8 and they multiply to give me 16. Well, negative 4 and negative 4. When you add them, you get negative 8. When you multiply them, you get 16. Okay, well, that's the factors we got right there. Okay, so you can always go back to your factoring skills if you want to, or if you just follow this formula where you take your b over 2 squared on both sides, and you can just pull down the pieces. And then don't forget our constant here at the end. Okay, well, we're almost there. We almost have it in vertex form. We just need to get the f of x by itself. So we'll subtract 16 from both sides. Okay, that's vertex form. And now we have to do the extra little pieces. They asked for the intercepts. Okay, well, remember the x-intercepts, you plug in 0 for y and solve for x. Okay, so part A, that's just setting our equation that they gave us equal to 0. So I'm just going to set what they gave us equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay, well, I can factor that. So my middle term is my sum. My last term is my product. What two numbers multiply and give me 12, but when I add them I get -8? Well, -6 and -2. So I've got x minus 6 and x minus 2 equals 0. Set both factors equal to 0 and solve. So we get x equals 6 and x equals 2. Okay, well, those are my x-intercepts. I'm going to write them as points. So I've got 6, 0 and 2, 0. And we also need to find the y-intercept. Just so to find the y-intercept, we plug 0 in for x and solve for y. Okay, so I'm going to plug the zeros in for the x this time. So I've got y equals 0 squared minus 8 times 0 plus 12. Okay, well, those are just both zeros, so we end up with y equals 12. Okay, you'll notice this is actually standard form. So when they give you the problem in standard form, your constant is your y-intercept. Okay, remember there's an A, this is A, B, and C. Okay, well, that A is the same A that you see up here. So when I talk about rules for A, it doesn't matter what form it's in, vertex form or standard form, that A is going to be the same. Okay, so my y-intercept is 0, 12. Part B, we want to find the vertex. Okay, well, remember we can take the vertex. If we have it in vertex form, we can just take the vertex out. Well, we got the vertex form from the first part of the problem. Okay, so this is the x-coordinate. We have to change the sign, so it's going to be a +4 when we pull it out. And then the y-coordinate is right here. We leave the sign the same, so it's going to be a -4 when we pull it out. So 4, -4 is our vertex. And then part C, well, we need to decide if we've got a maximum or a minimum. Okay, if you looked in the notes, you saw that your A helps you determine which way it opens. If your A is positive, the parabola will open upward. If the A had been negative, the parabola would open downward. Well, we've got a positive A in this one, so our parabola opens upward. I'll just draw a little sketch over here. Okay, so our parabola is going to open upward. Well, we can't find a high spot then because it keeps going up to infinity, but we can find a low spot. So when your A is positive, you've got a minimum. You can find the minimum. And notice the y value will tell you how far down or how far up you are. So once you decide if you have a min or a max, then you just look at your vertex and you look at your y value. I had a -4, so my minimum is -4. And then part D, it just wants the range. Well, that was nice that we drew this picture. Okay, remember the range is your y values. Okay, so notice from the picture we can see that we're starting at -4 and we're going to positive infinity. Okay, and I put a bracket because the -4 is included, it's part of the graph. Okay, or you could also write it y is greater than or equal to -4. So whichever way you feel more comfortable. Okay, so there's more examples in the notes and of course more definitions, so make sure to check those out.